Many of you know SM Entertainment for being one of the first big K-pop companies that literally created the K-pop trainee model for all future groups to come. But SM is creating much more than just music, even food. So let's take a look at how SM Entertainment was founded, made what K-pop is today, and how they produce some of the most successful groups for each generation, from H.O.T to Aespa. Here is SM Entertainment's complete timeline. Now, everything starts way back in time to the 1970s. An up-and-coming solo singer called Soo Man started making hit songs in Korea. After beginning his entertainment career, he created a band. This band wouldn't last as Soo Man found it challenging to release music with the strict censorship of the Korean government at the time. Seeing not much left for him to do in Korea, he went to study computer science in America. While working on his master's degree at California State University in LA, Soo Man was amazed by the king of pop and music superstar Michael Jackson. Watching his music videos on MTV inspired him to do something more. Soo Man would return to Korea in 1985 with a vision. As he put it, with a vision of what the Korean music industry could be. But once he stepped foot in Korea, it wasn't that easy to start a new music company. Soo Man began working in Korean entertainment once again as a DJ and presenter, saving most of his money for the next 4 years until 1989, where he finally had enough to create his music label SM Studio. You know, using his initials Soo Man for the SM part. SM Studio went ahead to sign their first ever artist, Hyun Jin-young, a rapper and hip-hop artist that helped popularize hip-hop in Korea. At this time, K-pop was not even a thing yet, until the vision of Soo Man mentioned was brought to light. What he specifically had in mind was the K-pop training system you see today. Sure, artists before then trained in singing and dancing before debuting, but SM Studio would take it a step further. Soo Man implemented a rigorous training system with monthly evaluations, adding public speaking to teach the trainees how to interact in interviews, teaching stage presence, setting his artists apart from others while performing, and of course, the strict rules like no drinking, smoking, or driving. This new system was in top gear when SM Studio officially changed its name to SM Entertainment in 1995. SM's first K-pop group and the first ever really K-pop group was H.O.T. H.O.T debuted and they brought in what would be the first generation of K-pop, but they didn't really call it at the time. The boy group was a smash hit with younger listeners, starting the first waves that would lead to the rise of Korean entertainment in Asia by moving into China and Japan a bit over time. With many going through the SM trainee system now, it was time for a girl group in 1997. S.E.S was named after the 3 members' stage names initials, and if SM's first boy group H.O.T was a monster rookie, S.E.S was even bigger. Their debut album, I'm Your Girl, sold 650,000 copies and made S.E.S the second best-selling girl group in Korea, with only 1 album. Just 2 years after H.O.T, SM Entertainment prepared another boy group. Shinhwa debuted in 1998, and while both H.O.T and S.E.S found fans and success soon after debut, Shinhwa's story was a bit different. Many critics of the group claim Shinhwa's music was just a copy-paste of H.O.T's sound. Also, the group faced their own controversy that probably caused their first comeback to perform below average. It was so bad that there was talks about Shinhwa already disbanding. But luckily, their next few comebacks found the group's popularity rise, and Shinhwa is one of the only first-generation K-pop groups that are still going strong today, just not in SM Entertainment. SM would then take a break from back-to-back groups and focus on new firsts for the company, including their first duo R&B group Fly to the Sky in 1999, and their first solo artist simply known as BoA in 2000. While most artists that came out of SM Entertainment by now weren't much of a gamble after the system worked to perfection, BoA's debut was another story. BoA was only 11 years old, and what made it even harder was SM Entertainment had a plan to debut her both in Korea and Japan at the same time, but focusing more on building recognition in Japan first. BoA spent so much time in Japan that many Koreans thought she was a Japanese artist. BoA would turn out to be a rising star in Korea and, more importantly, Asia. Aside from Japan, SM Entertainment with BoA made moves in China and America. BoA did so much groundwork for the company that even Lee Soo-man gave her credit for basically saving SM Entertainment when their first group's contracts were coming to an end. BoA's success brought in a whole new generation of SM artists. The first groups I mentioned, H.O.T and S.E.S, disbanded in 2001 and 2002. That was a huge blow for SM Entertainment. Those groups were the real and only money makers for the company besides BoA. But BoA wasn't really enough to fund SM Entertainment's business ventures in Japan to set up a new sub-label. So the duo Isaac and Jiyeon and boy group Blackbeat made their debut in K-pop. But both artists gained very little public attention and their careers were very short-lived. But one thing they could rely on is SM's trainee system yet again, to find and train SM Entertainment's new boy group to compete with other groups from growing companies. This was a 5-member group called TVXQ. TVXQ debuted in 2003. Quickly, SM Entertainment learned, hey, wait a minute guys, we make groups good. As TVXQ debuted with little praise until their first comeback that got them multiple wins on music shows. But one thing SM didn't do good was contracts. TVXQ would be reduced to only 2 members because Jaejung, Yuchun, and Junsu requested a split from the group, which eventually turned into a little lawsuit. The members of TVXQ had 13-year-long contracts, almost double the average K-pop contracts today at only 7 years. They would leave and create their own group JYJ, and TVXQ continued with Yeonho and Changmin. The following 2 years saw new groups like Trax, an EDM-focused trio in 2004, and a new girl group called The Grace in 2005. But the year 2005 was also the year SM Entertainment would take on the challenge of a much larger group with 13 members. Super Junior would continue from where H.O.T left off. Soon enough, with commercial success of major hits like Sardi Sardi, Korean media labeled Super Junior the kings of the Hallyu wave, with how successful and well received their music was outside of Korea, bringing K-pop to newfound lands like Southeast Asia, Saudi Arabia, and Latin America. Places many thought K-pop would never catch on. Aside from a few solo artists coming out of SM Entertainment, the next 3 years would see the additions of groups that would be why many of you watching right now got into K-pop. 2007, Girls' Generation debuts. 2008, SHINee debuts. And 2009, FX debuts. They didn't know it yet, but Girls' Generation would become the most iconic girl group in K-pop and Korean music history, becoming the best-selling girl group in Korea and Japan for over 10 years. And because of their impact on culture, Girls' Generation was honored with the name the nation's girl group. SHINee brought in fashion and performance to K-pop. During their career, they weren't scared to experiment with a new sound or a new look. SHINee was the first SM Entertainment group to really break away from what SM was known for. Now FX also followed SHINee when it came to being unique in a time where K-pop was catching on with the success of Girls' Generation. FX stood out immediately, crushing the girl group image, blending in with different concepts. Also, Amber, the group's rapper from America, started the, I guess for the lack of a better term, tomboy look. Many groups would copy later on. If you notice, SM Entertainment is the first to do a lot of what would become trends in K-pop. In 2010, after building his company into the music empire it is, Lee Soo-man resigned from his board of directors position. He would take this opportunity to work on businesses outside of SM Entertainment. SM would experience their highest earning year in 2010 since the company's creation, bringing in 22.7 billion won, a 58% increase from last year. Oh, that's 20 million US dollars, if you're wondering. 2012 saw the next phenomenon to come out of SM. We all know EXO. As a 12-member group, they would function as 2 though, because some members were scouted from China. Tao, Chris, Lay, and Nuhan. EXO-K would promote in Korea while EXO-M would promote in China, a strategy SM would use in future groups. EXO as a whole quickly became a top boy group in K-pop for years, till now. In 2014, SM Entertainment had their most significant lawsuits that saw the falling out of the Chinese members of EXO. Chris started the movement when he mentioned the company mistreated him and other Chinese members compared to the Korean members. Soon after, Tao and Luhan filed their own lawsuits, and after some time, they would lose the cases and have to finish out their contracts before leaving SM. which they did. But brushing that under the rug, 2014 would be known for at SM Entertainment was the year their third girl group debuted, introducing the third generation of K-pop. Red Velvet teased their versatility as a group in pre-debut projects like Be Natural. They would have two sides, a red side which represented their pop side, and a velvet side which was their R&B side. They debuted as 4, however, and wouldn't become 5, we recognize them as now, until their first comeback with Ice Cream Cake, welcoming their newest member, Yeti. The good thing is, the public started to love Red Velvet with the release of Ice Cream Cake, and it's been a steady climb up since. Although it wasn't easy, Red Velvet became the pride of Korea soon enough. I know it's really not surprising to hear that SM Entertainment was about to do something crazy yet again. This time, it was announced at a press conference in 2016, held by Soo Man. Now, while this looks like a plan to take over the world, well, actually, it was.
결정체가 될 SM New Artist Group NCT의 티저 영상과 퍼포먼스를 보셨습니다. 그런데 이 팀의 NCT는 Neo Culture
Technology, aka the boy group NCT, was a one-of-a-kind group. While EXO split up into 2 groups, NCT was meant to split up into infinite groups with endless members. You know, like cells, you know, they split and, you know, science. And it all started when the first unit in 2016, NCTU, debuted. And as you can tell, this group was going to be unlike anything we've seen before. Then there was NCT 127, a unit representing Seoul, where all the members came from. Then there was NCT Dream, a unit with a younger age range of members. Then later on in 2019, SM would try to target the Chinese-speaking audience with WayV. Another spin-off of NCT with Chinese, Thai, and members from Hong Kong. All these subunits fell under the NCT umbrella. They even all assembled together like the Avengers for a yearly jam-out session. SM literally built an immortal, infinite supergroup. Then the company would take a time to get into the food business with SUM or SUM market. They were using their copyright on their group's names and likenesses to slap it on some food and home products. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd still buy a Sugi candle. Wouldn't you? I mean, maybe I'd get 5 or 10, I don't know. With SM Entertainment naturally looking to be the first in everything, one thing they weren't the first at was breaking into the US market successfully. That is, until the explosion of BTS in late 2018. SM saw this chance and made K-pop's first ever supergroup. SM made a big deal out of their next group, SuperM, combining members from EXO, SHINee, and NCT to form K-pop's supergroup. However, they wouldn't promote on Korea, but take on America. SM signed SuperM to Capitol Music Records and spent who knows how many millions to debut SuperM in the US in 2019.
We're here to celebrate the release of their debut EP, the first mini album, SuperM.
They would make the rounds on US TV, and much to many people's surprise, SuperM became the first Korean act to hit #1 on the Billboard 200 with a US debut. Now I know it feels like it's been a decade, but 2020 was the year the Earth seemed to stop spinning, and most people were stuck inside with nothing to do. SM Entertainment looked at this and saw another opportunity. They signed a partnership with Naver to bring you Beyond Live. You might have watched a concert or two with the technology of Beyond Live. SM artists and non-SM artists alike, like Twice, used it to still hold concerts for the world to see, but virtually. Then the company expanded its trainee system into actual school education. SM's Institute is a K-pop academy for both Korean and international aspiring artists to study and train, to bring in even more talent to the company. Expected to open in 2021. So, if you're interested, I wonder what kind of food they serve. Anyways, Soo Man then did something very interesting and out of the ordinary. He got involved in the production of the hashtag album of the girl group LOONA in 2020. That was the first time he ever worked on another group's music outside of his own company. Could there be more collabs in the future? And the last move by SM Entertainment is the newest girl group to debut after 6 years since the last. Aespa definitely made headlines with their whole virtual group concept. They teased that Aespa would be made of half human and half virtual members, reflecting the actual number of members in the virtual world. It was a bit strange, let's be honest, but it could be another trend, just like how SM did many times before. Aespa debuted with Black Mamba, and those concerns about the virtual members faded away, as the debut was well received. But we'll have to wait and see what Aespa will truly become. If SM Entertainment is recognized for anything, it's basically creating the modern K-pop group and trainee system. They state as one of Korea's biggest entertainment companies because they're looking for new ways to innovate and not wait for someone to do it first and then follow. SM Entertainment is a major leader in Korean music from day one for the last 25 years. And I see no end in sight.